Good afternoon, Miriam.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for agreeing to jump on the spotlight. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So I'll start off by reading your bio.
Okay.
So Miriam Kosowsky is a certified attorney mediator with over 25 years of legal experience. For over 10 years, she has been the principal of Mediation Saves, Time, Money, Relationships, and Children, which is a mediation practice that focuses exclusively on family law. She is the vice president of Massachusetts Council of Family Mediation, the premier family mediation organization in Massachusetts. Miriam graduated with honors from Harvard Law School. At Harvard Law School, where she was the president of the Family and Children Right Projects. Miriam has a psychology background that is helpful in her mediations, having majored in developmental and cognitive psychology at Barnard of Columbia University, where she graduated second in her class. I want to know who number one is. Anyways, before becoming a mediator, Miriam worked as an assistant district attorney in Norfolk County, and then as a corporate litigator at Sullivan and Worcester in Boston. Miriam's clients range from those with complex compensation packages, including deferred income, carried interest, and stock options, to hourly workers. She also has vast experience with clients who are business owners or self-employed. Miriam guides her clients in supportive, caring, and professional manner and works with them to find creative solutions to satisfy each of their important interests to create divorce agreements that they feel are fair, not only now, but for years ahead. Additionally, she works towards the best interests of the children so the parents can learn to parent well together as they begin living separate lives. So that's awesome. So I get a lot of takeaways there. So you were a litigator,
Yes.
you fight, to now you're a peacemaker.
Yes,
So
it's a much better place to be. It really is, and we really try to work on win-win solutions. So it's sort of like the typical mediation question is somebody goes and sees two kids will say fighting over a piece of cake, right?
yeah,
A person will immediately assume, well, the easiest way to settle this is to give everybody half a piece of the cake. So each of the children will be a little upset that they don't have the full cake. But what a mediator does is tries to delve into the interests and will ask, well, why do you want the cake? And one person might say, I like the frosting, and one person might say, I like the cake. And that way you could divide the cake in a way that it's satisfying both of their interests so that each person gets exactly what they want. And that's what we try to do in mediation. There are many creative solutions that we could use that are very different from the traditional ones that you might find if you were litigating.
so when you were litigating, like what percent ended up getting negotiated anyways? Where
Pretty much most of them, often on the eve of trial after people had spent a lot of money. Actually, but I didn't do divorce work because I always did corporate litigation, because I think that really in most cases, and not in every case, in some cases you really do need to litigate a divorce case, but in most cases it's a much calmer, it's much better. I think you also get better outcomes if people are in mediation. It also helps to preserve the relationship between the parties because, as I tell them, nobody's going to love your children as much as the two of you. That is such an incredible bond, and that's something so important to have. And these children rely on the parents. So it's really helpful to always keep them front and center, and to also really help the kids, that help the parents, so that they have a much better relationship, so that they're calmer, which works well for everybody.
yeah, so it's with all that, I mean, it's everything starts with a goal or a vision, like in terms of there's life after divorce. So I guess you got to say, what do you want that to look like?
Exactly.
The family unit and everything.
I've got a case where actually a couple came to me, and the wife came to me because it was her second marriage. She was about to have her second divorce, and she said she did not speak to her husband from the first marriage, nor one of her sons from the first marriage. And she wanted to change that. So we went and we had mediation, and it went very smoothly until the end, where suddenly they were getting a little angry at each other. And I just said to them, I said, listen, think about the reason why you came here. Let's go back. Let's do a reset. And so they were able to finish it very peacefully. And 2 years later, they sent me a picture. They had both been to Israel together for their child's bar mitzvah, and they're all smiling, and it's one
Oh, wow.
happy family. So even though they were like divorced, they still kept that family unit together, which is so incredibly important. So that's what I wanted to look at. I want it at their child's wedding for the two of them to be dancing together and just being so excited for their child.
Oh, that's awesome. So, look, at what point in your career did you decide to switch over to the family law end of things? Did something happen, or was there a aha moment?
Well, I realized that when I was with my children, I was telling them to be kind and to share. And then I would be going into the office and saying, this is all mine. And it just didn't seem right. And I really felt like mediation was the way to go. And the reason I got into family mediation is because it does merge the psychology and the law aspects of my field. And also much more of my temperament is much more of a, Pisces, let's sort
Yeah,
of, make peace.
that's great. Now, what stages are people using your service? Is it all of it, pre, post, after divorce?
So typically before
Okay,
when they come to me for the process of getting a divorce. I also do marital mediation. Sometimes if there's just one thing in a marriage that really needs correcting, the way somebody's dealing with money or something like that, then there could be a quick fix. So you don't really have to end the marriage. But typically people have already made that decision to divorce, and they're coming to me because we want the process. So it's really start to finish. Since I'm an attorney, I also get to sign the documents. I notarize the documents. So everybody has a complete set of documents so that when they go to court, they file, it's a joint petition. So they're coming together as petitioners, not plaintiff and defendant, as there
right.
would be in a litigation. And it's much more harmonious. So that's when they come. And one thing that I would caution people about is they should not do anything, especially with retirement, until they go to a divorce professional. Because if you take out money to give your spouse from your retirement without it being an approved document by the court, then you're going to get pre-penalty taxes. If you're under a certain age, you're going to have to pay ordinary income taxes on it. So it's really important for people not to do. It's great to talk about it and to decide certain things, but to always keep an open mind, because they don't know the law, and also because there are a lot of tax benefits. Most transfers have no tax consequences whatsoever, but it has to be done right.
Right. So that's great. Is there any other heads up advice you would give someone that's just starting down the path? That was great right there.
Thank you. Also, I mean, when it comes to support, this is something that as a mortgage person, you would know that it is really important that um, it's very important that, or as a financial person, it's very important that the payments continue monthly, that there isn't a stop, because what mortgage people have said is even though somebody might be paying a support for a year, if there's 1 month where they've stopped, then the clock stops and it starts again from where they have the payment. So that's a very important thing to, even if they're not sure exactly how much payments should be, just to start something so that there's a continuous trail, which will help the person getting support have a credit, or already start getting a credit history.
Absolutely. You got to keep that continuity going.
Exactly.
So when someone's going through this in terms of trying to select a divorce team, financial planner, mediator, what would you suggest that they look for in their team?
Okay, well, first of all, when if they're looking for a mediator, they should really ask how many mediation cases the person does, or how many they do a year, because you could just say that you're a mediator and handle maybe a case a year. So you really want somebody who does this pretty often and really is aware of both the process of mediation and also more about the surrounding, what judges are likely to do. So that's the first thing. And second of all, it's really helpful for people to have financial experts who could help them with, because, sometimes people are coming and they've been struggling with one house and to support their family. And now they're going to have to be having two residences and supporting many more expenses on the same income. So it's really helpful to have somebody helping them. It's not required, but it's always it's always very helpful. And I always say it's also helpful if the kids could have somebody to talk to, definitely tell the
Right.
teachers what's going on and see if there are supports for the children and also for them while they're going through this.
Yeah, I suppose, with the parents, you gotta remind them that the children are gonna be watching them in terms of their reaction. Let's say all of a sudden you gotta send the children to daycare. Now, how are you gonna deliver that? You could say, oh, you're gonna have a ball, you're gonna love, we're gonna take you to this place. Or if you're like, oh, sorry to do this to you. So I suppose the delivery of how you deliver to the children, they're gonna pick up on. Do you find that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And what we also say, which is really important, is don't talk about your divorce or your other spouse in front of the children or where they could hear. And kids are amazing at being able to hear things when their parents think they're either outside playing or asleep, because we talk to therapists who have said, oh yeah, I've asked the kid, well, how do you know this? And the child will say, oh, well, when my parents thought that I was X, Y, and Z, I heard it. So I always say, if you want to do that, go in your car where you're alone or speak when the kids are in school. It's really, really important to shelter them. And even though, like, especially teenagers might feel like, okay, oh yeah, isn't this parent really obnoxious, etc. To the other parent, what you always have to remember is that 50% of their DNA is each parent. So if you're
Yes.
saying something negative about the other parent, you're also saying something negative about them. And as much as they might try to goad you, it's really better if you take the high road.
Yeah.
Hard to,
And
to always do it, but
and on the flip side, the children, they do listen to you. I remember, my son's 30 now, and recently he said something that I told him when he was 10. It was a positive thing. I'm like, I go, you remember that? He goes, yeah, I was listening.
it is even the things they've made fun of. So, sometimes I would tell my kids if somebody was going really slowly in front of us, I'd say, well, you never know, maybe that person has a pot of hot soup taking it to somebody who's sick.
Yeah.
And one time, years later, I was getting annoyed at somebody who was going slowly, and my son said, Mom, maybe that person has a pot of hot soup.
You're
They
like,
are listening.
maybe they do.
Yeah.
Is there any particular case or scenario that impacted you the most that stands out?
Oh, there's so many. Like
Yeah.
one was I had a couple, and they did not have a very good relationship at all. And at one point, the wife had surgery, so they asked if I could come to her house, their house, instead of coming to my office. So I went to their house, and they were talking, and somehow they mentioned this Italian vacation. And since we were at their house, I said, "Oh, could you show me photos?" And they showed me photos, and they were looking, and suddenly from then on, the mediation changed so much because they had that memory of a good time together. And I said to them, for people old enough to know about records, I said, your relationship is like a record. Just because there were scratches on the record and at the end of the record ended with a big scratch, it doesn't mean there wasn't beautiful music along the way. And
Okay.
that really totally changed the whole idea. There was another case where I had parents, and right before they were leaving the session, the wife had said something about, reminding the husband that this at 7:30 they were going to have a music performance by their child. And he said, yeah, I've got it in my calendar. And she said, where are you going to sit? And he said, well, you probably want me to sit as far away from you as possible. And she said, no, not at all. He said, really? Well, I'd love to sit next to you. And she said, well, I'd love that too. And it ended up where he ended up picking up the wife and the child. They all went as a family to the music performance, and how wonderful that was for the child to see the
Oh, yeah.
parents sitting together. And had they not had that communication, he would have sat really far away thinking he was doing what his wife wanted. His wife would have been really annoyed. And so that's a huge thing about mediation too. It really gets people to communicate together, and it's so much better for everybody. Oh, and that's also, it reminds me of something that I always tell parents, and that is, even if you don't want to sit next to your spouse, sit in the same general area so that if a child kicks a goal or something, doesn't have to figure out, okay, do I look at mom? Do I look at dad?
Oh, right. Good point.
You look in the same direction. So there are a lot of little tricks that you get, or just to make the process so much easier for everybody involved. And also, just as far as clever solutions. So I had a case where it was about a house, and it was sort of like the cake analogy where both people wanted the house, and the husband wanted the house because he wanted that house ownership. He didn't like renting. And the wife wanted that house because she didn't want to have the trouble of quickly having to find a new place to live, because she had to do that in the past, and she really had trauma associated with it. So what we decided, instead of what a typical solution in litigation is, which is just sell the house because nobody can agree,
Yep.
is that she would get the opportunity to be in the house for a year, to slowly look for a house. And then once she found one, then he would end up buying her out, and he would retain the marital home. And it ended up that she found a place much sooner than the year, and they both really got what they want. So it was a case of a win-win that you really get in mediation, which is just always, it's always amazing, the solutions that can be reached.
Yeah, no, the ideal scenario is when both parties feel like they got something, period, because usually in anything, right? If you do a negotiation and you feel like, oh boy, I really won, and the other person felt slighted, that it never ends well when something like that happens.
And
But
it hurts the relationship, right? So many people I think we know are like, I screwed with my divorce. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We want people to really feel like it was fair and that they were listened to, because it's such a hard process. It's sort of like it's a death of a relationship, and it's really difficult. So to have somebody who's supportive, who's empathetic, who's really listening and trying to sort of be on their side is really helpful.
that's great. Now, where can someone get a hold of you?
So if you go to www.mediationsaves with SAVES.com, and that's to save time, money, relationships, and children, then that's how you could do it. Or should I get my phone number? Or
Yeah, why not?
Okay, it's 617
Mhm.
515 2436. Again, 617 515 2436. And I give free consultations. So give a call, and I'd be happy to help you with this process.
All right. Well, Miriam, this has been great. Definitely a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much.
All right. Well, listen, have a great, wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Stay. Okay.